Welcome to FedScoop TV and our special series on advancing digital government in the cloud. I'm your host, Wyatt Cash, and we're here today with Joe Klimavicz, the CIO from the Department of Justice. Welcome to the program, Joe.
Thanks, Wyatt. Glad to be here.
Terrific. I'd like to talk to you first about how you envision cloud computing, maybe both as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, helping improve the Department of Justice's overall IT operations over the next year or two.
Sure. Well, I mean, at the top level, cloud services are a very critical piece, a central piece of our overall IT strategy. And that strategy is really how do we advance or push our IT services at the pace of American innovation? How do we reduce the cost of those services? And how do we make sure that we're securing the information and associated systems? Cloud solutions, cloud services support all three of those initiatives or areas of focus. But before I get into talking about cloud, let's recap where we came from. In 2010, we had 110 data centers in the Department of Justice. We've closed 75 of those data centers. In 2015, we closed our second largest data center down in Dallas. Next year, we closed our largest 100,000 square foot data center in Rockville, Maryland. And in the last 2 years, we've saved avoided spending money on $28 million on data centers. Now, a lot of that IT has gone to the cloud. Significant portions of our IT infrastructure and end user compute are now in the cloud. And that's a huge change for us. What we're seeing is that we can get better services, reduce cost, and it's really secure. What we've done is we put an acquisition vehicle in place to allow a kind of a fast road to get to cloud services, a wide variety of cloud services. But it's a big lift. And when we close Rockville, we're looking at moving about 1,000 VMs into commercial cloud, and that's a lot of work. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We're actually now seeing mission systems being running in commercial cloud environments. So there's certainly no end in sight. We're actually piloting some cloud solutions to try to go after some of our most intractable, highly compute-intensive problem sets. We have tremendous data holdings in the Department of Justice, and we need big compute, and we're seeing we can get to that the easiest in the cloud.
That's an impressive amount of progress. Tell me a little, as agencies move to the cloud, it's a big technology shift, but it's also about change management. How did you go about orienting your staff and your IT team to make that kind of shift, and what did you learn from that?
You're absolutely right. It's not only about the technology, about the change management's huge. And I'm going to hit on a couple of things, maybe in lessons learned, but in no particular order. But I think, from my perspective, one of the things you've got to nail down is the governance. Who's making decisions when? In Department of Justice, we have a very mature governance model with a Department CIO Council and 6 committees. The committees don't make decisions, but they are subject matter experts. They're chaired by a senior executive on my staff and a component CIO. I hold both of them accountable for working together. So they're co-chairs. They work through all kinds of challenges and issues. But you have to do that, and you have to make sure everybody gets a voice because it's a collaborative effort. Last thing would be is just plain out telling people what to do. You want to make sure you hear all possible sides. The next big thing is communications, and I'm sure that everybody says communications, but you really can't communicate enough when you're undergoing these big transformation initiatives. I think strong leadership support is key, not just from my position, but from the very top of these departments. You need to stay focused, stay on message. If you're constantly changing the priorities, focus, people tend not to want to follow you at some point. So stay on message and get support. I think the other thing is making sure that you've got the right management approach and you're paying attention to details. If people think you're paying attention to details, you're actually concerned about their their mission, their initiative, and their environment, then they're more likely to follow along, and then we can work through those issues, because you will have a tremendous number of challenges. I mean, there's nothing that's that easy about this, but you can work through all those things. I guess the last thing is just, and I hear this from every component CEO, is the mission. The mission is very important, and one thing I always tell people is we don't want to do anything in these transformation initiatives to jeopardize the mission. In fact, we really want to strengthen the mission, and we want to make sure that we're taking all that into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the transformative aspects of this. How do you envision that cloud services can improve or even transform the services that the department provides your collective customers? You have a large group to serve.
Well, I think the cloud services and the whole move to the cloud represents a huge opportunity, because let's see, I think you're going to see this aggregation of data, ubiquitous access to data that's going to be in these cloud environments, along with compute. So from my previous CIO assignments, I understand the power of co-locating data and compute. Mm-hmm. It's very, very powerful. But what that's going to do is it's going to transform, I think, the end user experience. Having essentially unlimited compute and ubiquitous data access together. I think we're going to see a much more immersive experience for the end user. And I think what that really is going to translate into is new insights from this data, and you might hear the term dark data that really hasn't been exploited or used. Right. For we haven't gained the value from that data, but yet it's in our holdings. And I think what we're going to see is more tools associated with artificial intelligence being used, because we're going to have an ability to run these artificial intelligence kind of tools and capabilities in that area. I think when you look at, and I spend a good bit of time and I try to keep up with where technology is going in lab environments and so on, but when you look at the cutting edge of compute, and there are today operational quantum computers. We've got neurocomputers that are trying to mimic how the brain works and so on. These kind of computers, when they're going to run first in a cloud environment. But when you can bring those to bear to work against your data sets and your problem sets, and I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years unbelievable insights from the information that we already have today. And while I'm on a roll on this, I think the Internet of Things is going to give us a whole lot more data. Everything now seems like it has its own IP address and its own camera and video at that. It's a lot of information, and a lot of that information finds its way into Department of Justice. But while this, the Internet, the IoT or Internet of Things has a lot of advantages in terms of the information, but also can present security challenges. I mean, every one of those devices needs to be properly secured. So I think that's something we're going to have to deal with. And while I'm talking about cyber, I think because as we move to the cloud, I think boundaries, historical physical boundaries that we used to focus on securing, those kind of get washed away.
Yes.
And I think you're going to see more of an emphasis on securing the data and less on securing physical boundaries. So that's kind of how I see the world evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for laying out that landscape. Lastly, you've been in the federal space a long time and part of the cloud migration over more than a couple of agencies. Tell us, if you could change one or two things that would help accelerate the adoption of cloud computing, or you could change any of those things, what might they be?
Well, yeah, it's 34 years this summer. It's a long time and been in a lot of places. I think one thing that I've seen, and we really haven't made as big a progress as I would like, is is removing the acquisition barriers for a lot of the smaller companies that have great ideas. When you look at, and I try to spend a lot of time working with these startups because I think they've got some really cutting edge ideas and some ideas that you can run with and maybe be ahead of some of the other guys out there. But they don't typically sell in the first 3 years of their existence to the federal government. And I think that there's a lot of barriers to doing that. It's still too hard for small startups to sell to the federal government. So that's one thing I try to do is maybe make it easier, cut through a lot of the your bureaucracy for startups to be able to sell. I think as we start taking advantage of cloud or remote computing, we need to figure out how we're going to connect to those solutions securely. Within Justice, we're building what we call a cloud-optimized TIC that we want to make sure we've got the right security controls in place going to commercial cloud environments, but not create bottlenecks. And so we think this is something that is critical as we move more and more to the cloud, that we can actually know what's out there, manage it, make sure it's secure, but also not create bottlenecks. But when you think about it, I mean, one of the beauties of cloud solutions is you can access them anywhere, anytime, and you don't want to come back to a central place too much, and that creates bottlenecks. So we're pushing the envelope in terms of thinking about this, but I think we need to do this at the federal level, and we need to have probably solutions like this at the federal level to make it easier for all agencies, especially the smaller ones who can't really afford to make these kind of big investments. And the last thing I think is that as we start closing our data centers and moving a lot of that to the cloud, individually it's taken a good bit of time and effort to work through all those issues. So I think better tools and technologies to make it easier to move applications and data to commercial clouds. And then I know there's a lot of tools out there in this area, but I would still like to have more tools and technologies to allow me to kind of seamlessly move data and applications between cloud environments, so that if something changes, parameters change, I can very quickly move from one to another, much like trading on the stock market. And that it's just a drag and drop versus actually having to go through a major migration. So those are just three areas off the top of my head.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming by, to sharing some of the insights, and also just hearing some of the progress that you're making, moving to the cloud and shutting down a lot of those remnant data centers. That's a big job, and congratulate you on that.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Well, on behalf of FedScoop TV, I'm Wyatt Cash. Thanks for watching.